I gotta wait for some parts to come in to finish the Mercedes, but I want to get a video out this week. So I thought I'd talk about some of the other projects I've been working on. This is a 1989 Corvette. It's got the 6-speed, the ZF 6-speed manual in it. The seats are pretty toast. The rest of the interior is pretty decent, like the dash. It's fairly clean. The door panels are nice, and it's a blue on blue car, which is really nice. I put new polarizing film on the digital dash so that it looks really good now. And then what I did early on is put a micro squirt in this car as well, which is super easy because you're just able to take the pins right out of the ECU, the factory ECU, and put the ones you need into the micro squirt. You don't have to rewire the car at all. I decided to put this aftermarket intake manifold on. This is a L98 2-port injected 350 cubic inch 5.7 liter V8 small block Chevy. This intake is, I think this one's from eBay, but they got them on Amazon too, but it's basically like a knockoff of an Edelbrock Pro Flow. It's kind of like a tunnel ram in a way. And I watched or saw some articles about it comparing it to TPI and some other intakes, and they showed that it didn't lose any torque down low, but it continued to make torque up to like 6,200 RPM. I put that on this car, and I can say for certain that this thing pulls really good all the way up to red line. If you've ever driven an L98 2-port car, you know they feel really good down around like 3,800 RPM or so, or maybe up to 4,000. You know, they feel really torquey, and they're kind of fun, but if you really try to run one out, as soon as it gets to 42 or 4,400 RPM, it just completely falls on its face. And putting this intake manifold on here has completely woken this engine up. It feels the same, if not better, down low, but it just pulls all the way to 6,200, no problem. I was using the GM HEI ignition system, but I was having the ignition timing was drifting with RPM, and there's some settings in the Mega Squirt or in the MS Extra software to kind of, I guess, compensate for that. But I was just kind of fed up with it. Also with the HEI ignition, you can't do any spark cut, because if you disable the computer interface to the ignition module in the distributor, it just defaults to a basic speed based timing curve. So there's not really a way to do any spark cuts. So what I did is I actually opened up the distributor and bypassed the ignition module. I took the pickup wires and connected them to a shielded, twisted pair of wires and put a connector on it through there. And so basically it's kind of like a VR sensor. The reluctor voltage goes directly into the micro squirt, and that works so much better. And then what I did is I used one of these high output logic level coils, and I just have it zip tied because I didn't even know if this thing was going to survive because of the duty cycle it's working at. You know, because as a distributor, those coils are usually meant for coil on plug, which would only have to charge and fire, you know, once per cycle or once per every 2 revolutions of the engine. But now it's having to fire 3 times per revolution, or 6 times per cycle. Not 6, I'm sorry, 8. It's a V8. I've been working with 6 cylinders. You have to fire 8 times a cycle or 4 times per revolution. So the duty cycle on it is really high, but I don't need a lot of spark energy for this motor since it's not turbocharged or anything. And so I'm using a very low dwell time. I think I'm only dwelling at like 1.5 milliseconds. It seems to be working. It seems to be fairly reliable. I need to clean it up a little bit. These wires, you know, are ridiculously long because all manufacturers do is keep adding length to their wires until they become a mile long. I also added long tube headers, which I kind of regret doing. Just mild steel that I did put some high temp paint on, and I've wrapped a couple of the tubes that are close to objects with some of that header wrap. But I don't recommend them. I've paid significantly less money, almost half the amount of money, for, you know, overseas stainless headers for a C5 Corvette that also came with stainless resonators and a stainless X-pipe. And these were twice as expensive, and they're mild steel, and they fit just absolutely terrible. I'm so disappointed with them. Basically, they came off these, the header flange at an angle immediately, and even using small Allen-headed bolts, you couldn't get them in here. I mean, even right here, right at the flange, they hit the tube because the tube comes off at an angle immediately. So I've had to dent the tube right there and try to make them fit, but it's just awful. It's, you know, if you used a stud and a nut, well, the nut is going to stick out even farther than the head of a Allen bolt, so that's not the solution either. All they had to do was come off that header flange straight for a little bit and then turn them. But they also ran it like insanely close to the steering shaft, and there's no reason to. There's plenty of room back there to move, you know, have the tube have some clearance to the steering shaft. On this side it's the same thing, but they ran the tube really close to the heater box, so I put some heater wrap on there, header wrap on there. But yeah, they're already rusting. And then another thing is they come with just regular spray paint on them, and they tell you it's not going to hold up to any kind of heat, so that means you have to now strip off all this spray paint they put on to put on high temperature, like ceramic paint or whatever, flame-proof paint, if you want to paint them. I mean, you have to, because you can see they're already rusting. Unfortunately, I couldn't really find any of those overseas stainless headers for a C4 Corvette. You know, they make them all day for C5s, but you know, the market is still fairly small on C4s, even though they made almost, I think, like 400,000 of them. The intake worked out really well. Surprisingly, the port match was amazing. I thought for sure it was going to be, you know, all off and stuff, and actually I put a borescope down here, and the ports and the intake line up perfectly with the cylinder head. It has a spot here already machined for like a GM, you know, maybe like a LS1 or LS3 map sensor. You guys know me, I stuck the Bosch integrated temperature and manifold air pressure sensor on here. It might have a bit of a heat soaking problem, as far as it seems to maybe conduct a lot of heat because of how hot the manifold gets under here, but it's been running really well. Then I just simplified a lot of the wiring and wrapped it up with the fabric tape. I think that looks a lot cleaner. If you guys do use this manifold, you'll have to make your own throttle bracket. And then I recommend not using one of these large 92mm throttle bodies. Just get you a factory, like LS, like a 5.3 truck throttle body or something. There's no reason to use this 92mm. It's really touchy off idle, and then you have to reduce it down anyhow, or it does make some contact with the hood, so I probably need to grind this down a bit. There's plenty of material here. But another project I got into is this 94 Camaro that was a V6 automatic I picked up real cheap. I sold the drivetrain, and I actually swapped in a 4-cylinder Atlas. So I put a 2.9 liter 4-cylinder out of a Chevy Colorado with the AR5 5-speed manual into this car. I've been wanting to play around with the 6-cylinder, the Vortec 4200, but the 4-cylinders and the 5-cylinders come with rear sump oil pans and manual flywheels, so it's a lot easier to get into those. And I wanted to do this car just real cheap. I got into drifting just for fun, I'm not trying to do it competitively or anything, but it's a lot of fun. I don't have pretty much any money in this car. I mean, probably sub $2,000 in this car, and you can go out there and have a lot of fun. Right now the engine's just naturally aspirated. I do have a turbocharger to put on it. I've just been busy with other projects. I cut the steering knuckles and re-welded it to get more angle, and then I got adapters to run 370Z coilovers on the car. You can see it's on the donut on the back right now. The interior is still pretty much all there except for the back of the car. I removed the seat, added an access panel that's sealed to get to the fuel pump, and then everything behind the dash has been removed. There's no more HVAC box or almost any wiring. It has headlights and brake lights, and it's got the turn signals still, though I had to remove the turn signal stock for repair. And then for a dash, it's just running a little touch screen that I put up there connected to a Raspberry Pi. The interior's not too bad. The air filter fell off the car, I see, a cheap air filter. But to get this engine in here, I didn't have to do too much modification. I cut the entire cowl off the car all the way back to the windshield, as close as I could get it to the glass. And then I reshaped the firewall to come up to whatever piece of metal stuck out past the glass and re-welded it. And that opened up a lot of room. Though it does mean that I don't have wiper blades anymore, but this car isn't to be driven on the street anyhow. That's about it. I had to make some motor mounts, and they just go down to like the V8 motor mounts that bolt to the cross member. But it does fit. The oil filter is very close to the steering rack, but you can get it out of there. And it just has, like I said, a little elbow on it with a cone air filter for now. The intake is really tall on these things, so if you don't make your own intake manifold, you will have to get like a cowl hood and still clearance the support for it. Alright, another project we got is actually for my wife. It's a 1987 or 86 Chrysler Conquest TSI. Has the 2.6 liter turbo and pretty decent body on it. There's some rust on the cowling. These cars are just horrible for rotting out, the firewall and cowling, but I did look down in there and everything looks clean. It's just like where the clips were that held the plastic cowl on. Like there's, you know, parts of the plastic cowl there, but it's like where the clips went through the metal rusted. So they get that cut out, cleaned up. The rest of the car is really pretty nice, actually. It's got the velvet, I guess you'd call that interior, all red or burgundy. Still has the factory radio. The interior is really nice. I mean, there's no tears or anything. A little bit of the plastic is, you know, kind of worn there. The door panels are really nice. And the dash pad looks pretty good, and then underneath that dash pad there's not even any cracks in the plastic. Doors closed super nice. The car was running when I purchased it, but it had an issue where sometimes it would just randomly run absolutely horrible, and sometimes even would quit running. I decided, you know, I was sick of the injection system. It's throttle body injected with two injectors, a primary and a secondary. And it also had a fully mechanical distributor. It actually had a vacuum advance and centrifugal advance distributor on a computer, you know, on a fuel injected computer controlled car. I'm not really sure what Mitsubishi was thinking in the mid 80s, but they were definitely behind the times, which is kind of contradictory because inside the car they're ahead of the times. They got steering wheel controls for the radio and automatic climate control, and yet the engine control is just insanely behind the times. So I said I had enough of it. I pulled all the engine wiring out of the car, which was a real pain in the butt because they put it together in with a lot of the car's wiring. The way that they did the fuse panel and stuff over here is just atrocious. It's just a bunch of fusible links and a big block, and I'm replacing the distributor with a missing tooth wheel that'll spin at the cam speed. It won't be as accurate as a missing tooth wheel on the crankshaft directly, but there's not a whole... I don't want to spend a whole lot of money on this car until we get it running and driving. And that will give me phase information, so there is that. Then I'll use one of these 4-tower logic level coils for ignition. I have 2 Bosch EV14, I think 11 or 1200 cc injectors. The nice thing about these EV14s is they will accept small pulse widths fairly well, so you can actually get away with a really large injector and run it at small pulse widths. I'll still do staged injection, so I'll have a primary injector and then I'll turn the secondary injection on, you know, once I basically max out the flow on this injector. To use these EV14 injectors, I made an adapter very similar to what's in the Mercedes. And then I used a 14 to, I believe they call this 11 millimeter top adapter. I just purchased these online because they were so cheap. And then that goes in there. And then I'll reuse the factory fuel regulator assembly on top. But all that's left to do is wire this car up, at least to get it running. I'm sure it's going to need other things, but I need to put the missing tooth wheel on the distributor with the Hall effect sensor, mount the ignition coil, and then do all the engine wiring, which I'm pretty fast at wiring. It really doesn't take me too long to wire an entire engine. But I just wanted to show some of the other projects I'm working on. And I know everyone's probably wants to see the dyno, so I gotta do some more machining on the frame and start putting that together. And I do expect to start making some more videos of that soon. Thanks for watching. Bye.